Welcome to Whose Line Is It Anyway? The show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. Wait a minute, that's the wrong intro, let me try that again. Welcome to the 2017-18 Vancouver Canucks, the season that everyone wrote off, but predictions don't matter. Usually with these Canucks Last Week videos, I try to keep them within 5 minutes, but for this week, I don't think that's going to be possible. 2 weeks ago, the Canucks caught a lot of people off guard by going 3-1 for the week. There was caution in people's optimism as the Canucks were playing some bad teams in Detroit and Buffalo, but it's not like the Canucks barely snuck out victories. They beat them pretty handedly, which is what decent teams should do to bad teams. This past week, the Canucks went 2-1, playing some much stronger teams. They beat the Minnesota Wild 1-0, God bless Big Tuna. They beat the Washington Capitals 6-2, controlling most of the play, and they did lose to the Dallas Stars last night in overtime 2-1, but they controlled 62% of the shot attempts that game. Somehow, the Canucks continued to play well even against better teams. So I'm still not saying that the Canucks are a playoff team, but this does leave us with two questions. The first being, how is this possible? How are the Canucks on this tear that they're on lately? And two, how should we as fans feel about this? And specifically, how should those on Team Tank feel? To answer question one, I think we have to go way back to the beginning of training camp and we have to see how Coach Green came in and took over. On the very first day of on-ice sessions, Travis Green set the tone for the entire season by bag skating the team. He knew conditioning would play a big role in how he wanted the Canucks to play this year, and whether you like it or not, pro athletes don't always come into camp in top shape. Anyway, this conditioning has really paid its dividends for the Canucks as it's allowed them to play with pace, which is really helping them out in their transition game. I've talked about this before in the first episode of the season, but playing with pace has allowed our breakout system to be very winger-centric, which has been hard for the opposition to defend against as long as our back end is able to move the puck reliably. What I found really interesting was that after the win against the Washington Capitals, the next day Travis Green still made the team bag skate, which is cool because Travis Green isn't letting the team get complacent and it's translating into high-effort games. So conditioning and work ethic is one thing, but this team is also very deep on forwards. Sure, maybe not Toronto Maple Leafs 4 lines deep, but every forward on this team is completely capable of playing in the NHL, unlike last year. No offense to Jason Megna and Jack Skilly. The Sedins are playing bottom 6 minutes this year against the opposing team's bottom pairing defensemen, and it's kept them fresh and still effective. If the top 6 of the BBB line and the Sutter shutdown line can hold their own against the other team's top 6, our bottom 6 with the Sedin twins on it should be able to beat most other teams' bottom 6s. Tyler Dello of The Athletic wrote an article about the Western Conference teams' top and bottom 6s, linked down in the description. But basically, from his research, he noticed that the Canucks' bottom 6 is one of the best in the league, and a large part of that is due to the Sedins. He also noticed that our top 6 is one of the best in the league at limiting goals against at 5-on-5, and while I'm sure we're going to see some regression here with our bottom 6 and our top 6, specifically Derek Dorsett, I mean, there's no way he's going to be able to keep up this goal-scoring pace, but it's definitely nice to see our forwards have some success this early on in the season. Our defense has also been surprisingly very sturdy in the wake of losing Alex Edler and Troy Stecher to injuries. Who saw this one coming? The pairing of Chris Tanev and Ben Hutton has been great so far. Michael Del Zotto and Eric Branson are holding their own, and the pairing of Alex Biega and Derek Pouliot has been a very, very pleasant surprise. I believe last game they had a Corsi for percentage of over 80% against the Dallas Stars. The Canucks have also gotten some very timely goaltending out of Anders 2 shutouts Nilsson and Jacob RKO out of nowhere Markstrom. They're also an interesting goaltending tandem as they're kind of like a yin and a yang. Anders Nilsson's style of play is more calm and collected and very minimalist movements in his crease, and is probably the type of guy to just read a newspaper or magazine beside a fireplace, whereas Jacob Markstrom is very, very aggressive and could probably take on a grizzly bear with his own 2 hands. That challenge he had last night where he came out of his crease to get the puck was Hasek-esque, and I loved it. I think both goaltenders are very serviceable and can be played on any given night, maybe even just depending on what team you're playing against. I can't really remember where I heard this from. I think it was Kevin Woodley in an interview, but anyway, someone was talking about how they would rather have Anders Nilsson play in a game against a team that has a lot of heavy shooters where they try to look for holes in a goalie's butterfly and hope they can squeeze through. And with Anders Nilsson's minimalist style of play, not a lot of pucks will squeeze through him, whereas with Jacob Markstrom's aggressive play, They'd rather him be in a game where teams are trying to pick the corner, and that's more of Markstrom's style. And I think that's a very, very interesting point where maybe even Travis Green will be looking at opposing teams' forwards and offense and picking his goalies based off of that. Okay, on to question 2. How do we feel? Obviously, if you're hoping for the Canucks to make the playoffs this year, you should be pretty happy with the start so far. But if you're someone like me, who was maybe more expecting the team to be closer to where Arizona and Montreal are right now, I still think these first 11 games are super positive. I think the first takeaway that we're getting is we're seeing how effective Travis Green is at getting the most out of his guys. The players are giving him their all each and every night, and it's really nice to see. He also seems like a very smart coach who can choose his matchups, as well as we're seeing he's very adept at developing our younger players such as Jake Virtanen and Brock Besser. So far at least. It also looks like Sven Baertschi has taken his game to another level, and I've said this before in previous episodes, but I really like how Sven Baertschi battles along the boards. More often than not, we see him coming away with the puck, and he's also a very, very capable defender in his own zone. I also think the same could be said about Bo Horvat and Ben Hutton's defensive game. I know I said previously that Ben Hutton hasn't looked great, but the Canucks Army put out a post talking about this, linked down in the description, and it sort of swayed my opinion a bit. Now, I have to be honest, I don't always have the chance to watch the games to their entirety, and a lot of times when you watch highlights, the mistakes can stick out a lot more in the highlights than the small, subtle plays that don't usually get even incorporated into a highlight pack. But after watching the Washington and Dallas game, and after reading that Canucks Army post, I've come to appreciate Ben Hutton a lot more, and I think he's been a very great defender for us in these past couple games. I'll take my L there in my previous opinion of Hutton. But getting back to it, it's been so long since the Canucks have been enjoyable to watch, so I say we should just enjoy this while we can. I don't think this hot streak is going to last forever. I mean, if it does, then we can actually talk about if the Canucks are playoff contenders or pretenders. Okay, now it's prospect update time. Isn't it great to always have something new to talk about for our prospects each and every week? This has been such a breath of fresh air for me. Let's get into it. Last week, we were talking about 4 or 5 prospects that were lighting up their respective leagues, and we didn't even get to mention Adam Gaudette, who scored 4 goals in 2 games last week, being named Player of the Week. Man, it's nice having a deep prospect pool for once. There's also been talk about Elias Pettersson and Adam Gaudette being named to their country's Olympic team, which would be very, very cool to watch. It also says a lot about how good these players are right now. I also read a little piece by Corey Pronman talking about 2017 4th round pick Jack Rathbone, and to me, Rathbone's a very interesting prospect. He sounds like he's a very, very elite skater, but the fact that he's been playing against lesser competition in the U.S. High School Hockey League, it sounds like it's been hurting him a bit, as he's been used to just being able to skate away from lesser skilled players, and he's been used to having the puck on his stick for maybe even too long and not moving it quickly enough than he should be. So he's another guy who I think has a pretty high ceiling, but also a very, very low floor. Finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Jason freaking Megna. I mean, I get it. Our top scorer was out of the lineup last night, and we only scored 1 goal, and fans would have rather seen Nikolai Goldobin be called up than Jason Megna, but let's not freak out just yet. Goldobin is going to get his chance this year. That I'm 99% sure he will. But why bring him up to the NHL when he's probably going to get sent back down to the AHL when Louis Eriksson and Brock Besser are healthy? That's just going to ruin his confidence, to me, in my opinion. And I don't really care if Jason Megna's confidence gets ruined. I don't care if Jason Megna gets sat in the press box. I don't care if he sits on the bench in the 3rd period. I do care if that happens to Goldy. So the way I see it, let's wait for him to be completely ready for the NHL, or at least as sure as you can be that he's ready for the NHL. Then we call him up and we leave him in the NHL. That's at least how I would manage a player like him who's pretty raw. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. It really helps me out knowing if I'm doing stuff right or wrong. And guys, I also have to thank you for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. I can't believe we got to this point. I wholeheartedly appreciate each and every one of you that watches these videos, likes the video, comments on the video. I love interacting with you guys, and I honestly think it's absurd that there's this many people watching an Asian kid talk about the freaking Vancouver Canucks. YouTube's crazy, man. Yeah, like, I don't know what else to say. Just, I really, bottom of my heart, thank you everyone that's supported me along the way. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.